So for this Sunday session, I thought we would do something a little bit fun and playful for Easter. We're going to be making a little chicken egg cosy, so that wherever you are, whether you're on your own and waking up on Easter Sunday morning, you can keep your little egg warm, or maybe you'll make one for all your family. Maybe you have grown-up children at home with you at the moment and you can surprise them with something a little bit fun, or maybe your house is full and you've been homeschooling and this is just a little bit of a treat, and get something healthy into them before they tuck into all that chocolate. So it's a very simple project. For beginners, it might be the first introduction to working with a resist. This is a resist, and it changes your felt making from being two-dimensional into something that is three-dimensional, because you're working on both sides of this piece of plastic, which is called the resist, and therefore the fibers are resisting adhering to each other. So you're keeping something inside for a while, so that it forms a hollow structure. And so this is a very basic, simple template. I've used a common resist material, which is a flooring laminate underlay, which you can get in a builder's merchant. But I realise that some of you might not be able to get that at the moment, or might not want to. You can also use a piece of bubble wrap cut to this simple shape, or indeed a thicker plastic bag. However, this sometimes has sharper edges, and that's why this is the preferred material. Make sure if you're using something like this that you really make your outline of your template shape very, very smooth, because it sometimes cuts through the fibre if it's laid thinly. So this is the ideal material. It's this flooring underlay, 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters, because it's quite a soft, flexible plastic and it doesn't cut through the fibres, which can be fragile at the beginning. Anyway, you can give it a go with different materials. So this is the basic shape that we're going to be using to make this little chicken. And I realise that for intermediate or advanced felt makers that this is a very simple project. However, there's really a lot of fun involved, and you can be very creative. I'd love to see peacocks and different coloured birds coming out. Perhaps as an advanced felt maker you could be giving this a tail or wings, and even embroidery artists can embellish him a little bit and make him even more jolly. I'd also like to point out how similar these are. So this is something that I make quite frequently, and it's a little unicorn on a bauble chain with a bell inside. But you can see that the resist template is really very simple. So if we begin with this, and this is our project today, perhaps you might like to move on to making other items yourself. And this really begins to transform your felt making from two-dimensional projects into something that, well, this could be a toy, this has a hollow bottom at the moment, and that's the easiest way, but obviously you can work out ways to keep this solid and just a small gap to remove the resist and then stuff it, and it becomes a solid object. And as you can see, this shape, not too dissimilar. This is a unicorn, this becomes a chicken. I also use the same resist when I'm making little bunny rabbits and things like that. So that's why I've provided you with this. So we'll get started. This project uses probably about 20 grams of fibre in total. It's usually the fibre comes in bags of 100 grams. So you can see that if you have 100 grams, you can probably get 5, even more, I would say, chickens out of this. Yeah, so we'll start. I lay my resist, and I'm going to use yellow as the base. And I'm going to lay out my fibre. So I do so in the normal way. And I'm not going to be terribly precious about this, but I'm going to lay horizontally. I'm not going to worry too much about the bottom, because I'm going to actually cut the bottom off. And I'm just going to make sure that the resist is covered horizontally, laying the fibres overlapping. And then I'm going to lay one layer vertically, trying to get an even lay, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. It's very forgiving as a material. So I'm trying to lay in a tile formation fairly evenly. Yeah, so I've laid one layer horizontally and one vertically. And now I'm going to wet that down. I have my soap in my mix. You don't have to, but I have at the moment. And I wet that fully. Going to move my other colours of dry fibre off so that they don't get involved in the water. Take my bubble wrap across, press down. And I'm pressing down and releasing so that the bubbles of the bubble wrap actually act like a sponge. We allow them to release and the fibres absorb some of that soapy water mix. When I feel that that is sufficiently wetted down, I flip the whole thing over. Now you can see the shape here. Quite a large amount of fibre around the outside. Strictly speaking, it would be nice to keep that to 1 centimetre around the outside, but as I said, I'm not going to be too precious about it. So as I peel it off, I'm going to guide the fibres around the resist. Going to pull them as far as they can pull without pulling the edge of the resist. I'm going to try to move the fibre around. I'm not folding it around, but yes, some little darts appear. I might use the scissors just to help me there. And then I pull it up, pull it over. See? I have some folds and I have some lumpy bits, but as I said, I'm not going to be too worried or precious about this because I know with this amount of fibre, it's all going to felt down to this little guy. And now we work on the second side and we follow the same pattern. So I'm working horizontally. I'll lay a little less on this side because I don't need to go right over the edge, but I won't be precious again. I think that's probably sufficient. And lay horizontally. And vertically. Okay, and I'm going to wet that down. Take my bubble wrap across, press, release, press, release. You can see how much the fibre spreads out around the edges. So there are different theories and techniques. Some people don't mind this and they want the edges to be well covered. Other people lay within the shape on the second layer, because then they have the same number of layers on all parts of the project. It really depends on what you're making. I know that this project is very forgiving and playful and fun. So I'll flip over. And as I peel off this amount of fibre, I just guide onto the resist. And then I work around the head, the bottom, trying not to have too many lumpy bits. And if I feel I need a little bit of help in these curves, I cut the fibre and I pull it over. I try not to have straight lines. So I'll tease the fibre out from the cut edges, and I'll make sure that the neck is pulled up. And if I am unhappy with some bits, I will pull them off. Okay. I'll press down again. I'll flip it over. Okay. So now I have the basic body shape, and I'm also going to lay the little feathers, headdress feathers, and the beak. For the beak and this little neck feather, I'm actually going to use a pre-felt that I made for a pre-felt that I had lying around for the beak, but you could just use fibre here, or you could make a piece of flat felt beforehand in whatever colour. I just find this quite easy. And I had some needle punch, so this is a different type of fibre that's not yet felted, it's not pre-felt, just little offcuts from Christmas projects, so I'm going to use that. Again, you could just use ordinary fibre here, or you might have bits and pieces. So, but this is an easy way of doing it. That might even fold just like that. So I'm going to just, let's see, let's get a bit like this. Cut a little rounded shape perhaps. There we go. So a little rounded shape I'm going with for here. And for the beak, I'll probably trim this down later. I have this little quarter circle. I should really brush that out, but I know that it should stick because it's really at a pre-felt stage. Will that do? So I stick this on like this, little guy. Maybe at this stage I'll wet that down, give it a chance in a moment. If I'm concerned, I'll take a little bit of, very little fine bit of my yellow. Use it as glue. I'll be flipping this over in a second, so I'll tidy it up. Those colours will all blend together anyway. And now for his headdress. So what am I going to go for? I will go for, got a bit of this nice raspberry colour. And I'm just going to lay this lightly right over the edge, vertically. There we go. And maybe I will just put in a little bit of red. This is my little punk chicken. And a little bit of orange on each side, yeah? And there we go. Wet that all down. Press and release. And flip. This time I'm going to make sure these fibres don't flip over. So we just tease them off the bubble wrap. I'm going to use a little bit of the yellow on this side again to make sure we have every chance that this is going to adhere and blend nicely. And I'm going to pull the fibres around that were sticking out on the other side. Bring up that orange. There we go. Now on this side, I'm going to just, in between these two layers, work with a horizontal layer, because as we know, in felt making, we work in two directions so that the fibres come together like this. So where we have a vertical or a horizontal layer, we want to have the opposite. But I don't want that layer to be seen, because obviously the direction of the feathers on the headdress of the chicken is much more pleasant when it works in this way. So there's the horizontal layer in the middle. And now I'll work vertically again. And I'm going to go with the raspberry colour. And a little flash of red up there. And punk stripes. Doesn't have to be the same on both sides, and that's where you can really have some fun. Okay, wet down, but not too much because there's a lot of water there. Flip over and press. So I have my soap in here, and we start the rubbing. I'll do this rubbing for about 3 or 4 minutes. And even at this point, which feels quite early, I'm going to roll. And in the other direction. Roll and squeeze. How are we doing, chicken? Okay, so things are starting to happen. You can see that this is starting to felt together. I'm not worried about lifting it, flipping it. This is adhering nicely, but it's not at all anywhere close to felted. But it's less fragile and can be handled. So now I can work on the surface itself. As I do this, I'm looking at the edges and trying to work on those sides, because ideally I don't want there to be any sort of visible seam. So I'm looking to smooth down those edges around the resist. This is where, if you're using a different type of plastic, you possibly are in danger of it cutting through, so you need to do this gently. But with this floor underlay, the laminate, it works very, very well. And of course, on these little areas where I added the pre-felt, I want to make sure that they are holding together. Not going to come off on me. So after a few more minutes of rubbing, when I'm convinced that the headdress is really becoming one piece of textile, fabric, and when the body is at a pre-felt stage, I'm going to take my scissors and start to shape the headdress. So here we can begin to see the resist inside, so I need to make sure that I don't cut to reveal that, but I want to just shape these feathers. And of course you can do whatever design you prefer at this point. Lots of spikes, or this is entirely unplanned, which can be good and bad, but there you go. Just make sure not to cut the resist, but to neaten up your feathers. Let's have a look at him. Yep, he'll be lovely. And do I want this beak? Will I be happy with that? I might just take a little bit off the beak as well. Do I want to reveal that? There we go. I'll use all those other little pieces in another project at some point. So now we can really be rough, because we want the headdress to have a felted edge and not a cut edge. And I usually lift the whole thing up, squeeze and rub when it's a project like this that I'm not concerned too much about its proportions. when I begin to feel the resist inside it wants to burst out, the fibre around the outside is shrinking to such a degree that it's becoming too tight, then I will cut the resist out. And release it. We're looking for a 50% shrinkage with the merino fibre. So if I bring this guy in, you can see at this stage how much further we have to go from this to this. So now I can begin to feel that the resist wants to burst out. The fibre it's really a three-dimensional object. It's a pocket, and inside is my piece of plastic. I can even fold it this way and really work on those side seams. If you were making a toy, you don't want to have the side seam being shown. Then you can rub to the point that you won't see two halves of an object. Look. This is starting to burst out. Now, if that was a toy, I would be quickly releasing this and making sure that that little hole didn't get any bigger. But as it is, we're going to use that. So I'm going to cut, and I'm not, you see, this is the length of the resist, and we can pull it out and keep that for my second one. I'm a family of 5, so everybody wants to have one of these on Easter Sunday. I'm just going to trim that off. I'll use that maybe for the beak of the next one so that it will be slightly different. And now I can work from the inside, because sometimes the side that you roll and rub is not as nice as the side that isn't rolled and rubbed. So if you work on the inside and then turn it back the right way round, that sometimes helps the finish as well. You can begin to see now this bumpiness. This is cellulite. That's what that looks like. It's sort of the cellulite. That's the beginning of the felting stage, where pockets of the fibre are joining together from both sides, but they're not entirely joined together. So when you have this bumpiness on the surface, which all felt actually does, but it's the beginning of the felting process, and you keep going, keep going, keep going. You might do a warm water rinse and a cold water rinse, even at this point, to get it to shrink faster. I'm not going to move away from the camera, but I'll just keep doing the rubbing, and I might do a cold water and hot water rinse, or hot water and then cold water rinse before I show you the final item. So you can see you can get right inside, and now you can understand what I mean about he's really quite a playful little thing. So if you have grandchildren, maybe he could be a finger puppet rather than an egg cozy. Yeah, just with one simple shape and adding plumage or beaks. Hello. I have my fingers right inside there. Obviously things like spatulas, rolling pins, wooden spoons are very handy. You can, you can stick a wooden spoon or the end of a rolling pin up inside him and just rub around the outside, especially if you might have arthritic fingers or something that you don't want to do all of this. That can be handy to hold the shape. I want to just, might even roll that. He might have an extra long beak, this guy. Let's see where I am in terms of size now. Oh, we're getting there. Yep, he's going to have a longer beak, but that's okay. He's got personality. And I'm going to just work a little bit more on him, and I'm going to do a warm water rinse, cold water rinse, and remove the soap. And then I'll come back to you. So I've done a warm water rinse and a cold water rinse, and you can see that this little guy with a little bit more rubbing has shrunk down to the size of his friend and is now approximately 50% smaller than the template. We did trim a little bit off the edge. I could work on this edge further to make it more smooth and straight, or I could take some scissors to it. But I'm happy with him. He's a little bit hairy. I'd probably wait for him to dry and trim or shave some of the hair off. I used this in the inside. I can show you, he's really solid, so he can take some torture, and that also allows me to hold and work on his plumage in that way, so that the edges become really felted edges rather than cut edges, and the little feathery bits, these plumage bits, felt down and shrink as well. His nose, I'm just twisting. It's a solid piece now. It's quite big, but quite like that. And I might even, while I've got that in there, might even work on sort of beak area. I'll probably sew on little eyes later, or maybe I'm not sure. I might do that. But there he is. So I hope on Easter Sunday that you have yourself a good hearty breakfast before tucking into the chocolate, and that you keep your egg cozy.